Welcome to the Grounded Guidance Podcast, where we explore the transformative potential of living in alignment with our intuition. I'm your host, Karen Williams. Each day we receive countless intuitive messages that guide us on our journey toward a more fulfilling life. Are you listening? Through personal experiences, ongoing self-reflection, and captivating stories, we will explore the wisdom of individuals who have embraced the magic of following their intuition and fearlessly sharing their light with the world. These conversations are designed to meet you exactly where you are, serving as a gentle push from the universe to join us on this enlightening journey.
Welcome, everybody, to the Grounded Guidance Podcast. I am excited to welcome Stepanka Kuralova to the podcast today. She is a clinical hypnotherapist, certified emotional freedom technique practitioner, writer, and the host of the Inner Glow podcast. She empowers women, creatives, entrepreneurs from around the world to overcome self-sabotage, unlock their true potential, and shatter the glass ceiling that limits their growth in life, business, and career. Stepanka and I have been chatting before we hit record, and it's just been a wonderfully enlightening discussion so far. So I'm super excited to see where this takes us today. Welcome, Stepanka.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction. I'm so honored to be here. So thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Let's jump right in to talk about hypnotherapy. I would love to just give an overview. Let's talk about how you came to hypnotherapy or hypnosis, and kind of unravel what the words mean to you, just wherever you want to start.
Yeah, thank you. I will start with what the word means to me. I thought that was such a good question, and I don't actually get asked this ever. So I want to address it. For me, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, basically means a conscious choice to step back in our power. Because hypnosis is one of those modalities that is truly surrounded by so many myths and misconceptions. We have been shown different things on TV, in different movies, and people sometimes don't have a clear idea of what hypnosis really is. And if you were to learn everything about hypnosis, what hypnosis really is, every hypnosis is self-hypnosis. You are the one creating that experience. You might be working with a hypnotherapist, with a practitioner who is guiding you, like myself, like what I do with clients, that essentially you are the one who can either accept that idea or you reject it. So you are actually the one creating that positive change. And people often believe the opposite. They feel like hypnosis, based on what we've seen on TV and in movies, that hypnosis could be just manipulation or mind control, but none of that is true. Actually, we now know that every hypnotic experience is self-hypnosis. And to me, it's just such a powerful proof that you are the one who can change your life. It doesn't have to be even this dependency on a hypnotherapist to provide you with a positive change, because it's you doing it, even if the hypnotherapist is guiding you. So for me, hypnosis is just such an empowering tool that is available to all of us. And my own journey started actually quite early on. When I was about 18 years old is when I first experienced hypnosis without even knowing it. And I was a first-year university student. I just moved to a city and I started studying at university, and all of a sudden I started having all of those unusual challenges. I would have fever on and off almost every single day. I felt sick in my stomach. I couldn't hold food in my stomach. Like anything I ate made me feel, I had an upset tummy after everything, like heavy. I couldn't move. And it was on and off for weeks. And as a first-year university student, normally you would go out there, you would socialize, you would be having a good time.
Right.
Well, none of that was happening for me because I was simply in my bedroom and that's all I could do. I wasn't sure whether I could even attend classes on certain days. So long story short, I of course went to see my doctor because I was concerned about my health. And when I shared all of those symptoms, he had me go and see specialists and have different tests done. So I had loads of different things done. And when the results came in, I was hoping to get an answer. I was expecting them to tell me that perhaps there was something wrong with me, and that would feel like a relief, that someone would almost like validate that experience I was having. And then I hoped there would be like a pill I could take and have all of those problems go away. And as you might be guessing, it didn't happen. The results did come back, and it actually showed that there was nothing wrong with me. Physiologically, there was nothing happening in my body. Everything was in perfect order. And I wasn't given any further help. And I felt really lost, and I didn't know what I should do, how I should make those symptoms go away. And the universe just guided me in the most incredible way to this yoga session. Basically, all the students, which I guess it's not always common, but all the students had to attend a sport class the whole semester. Even though we were studying languages and literature, we still had to have some sort of a sport activity to stay healthy. And I was putting it off because I'm not into sports that much. And so it took me a little while to sign up for something. Anyways, I ended up logging in and I was looking at all the different options. There was swimming, there was volleyball, there was basketball, there was like all sorts of different sports. It was a huge university. And I was like, what do I sign up for? So I thought, well, I'll just go swimming. All I had to do is like to check in and they will know I was there swimming for 2 hours. I thought, well, that's easy. I can do that. And as soon as I tried doing it, like my whole laptop just crashed. The screen went blank. And I'm like, oh, what's going on? Maybe I need to charge my laptop. Maybe it was low on battery and I didn't realize. So I plugged in my laptop and I did the whole process again. I logged in and I found that swimming, the swimming on Wednesday evening
and the class was closed.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, let's sign up again. And it happened again. And at that point, I started looking around my room. I'm like, is someone like pranking me? Is something going on here? Or is there like spirits? That's what I was thinking. Is there like ghosts in my room? Should I be worried? And so I turned all the lights on. And I tried doing it for the third time. But this time it said, oh, congratulations for signing up for a new sports class. And I thought, oh, maybe it did work. Maybe it did sign me up for a swimming class. So I opened my email this time and it said, congratulations for signing up for yoga for beginners. And I thought, how did I end up signing up for yoga? I have no idea. I didn't even know yoga was an option. So I wasn't that spiritually connected, but I thought this can't be happening by accident. Like I should actually go to this yoga class. So I ended up going there a few days later and the teacher welcomed us and she shared with us, like, if you have 20 minutes after the class, just stay here because I have this special recording that I would love to play for you, and I feel it will be really beneficial for all the first-year students who are probably stressing out and feeling overwhelmed. Just stay here, lie down on your yoga mat, and I will play this thing for you. It's really good. So I didn't know what to expect, but I had the time So I stayed on my yoga mat after the class, and she played this recording, and my life was changed within minutes. It was such a beautiful, guided relaxation technique. I couldn't really describe it, but within minutes, I felt so present in my body. And I never felt that before. I literally remember thinking, like, I didn't know it can be this good to be in my body. Like, I didn't know how comfortable I could feel and how grounding all of this is. And then I heard very clearly, like, Stepanka, pay attention. You will be working with this technique in the future. And I didn't know what to think about it. I'm like, what am I on about? Like, well, why am I thinking this? But that was such a clear thought in my head. And I paid attention. I did the whole technique, and I felt so different afterwards. I went back home and I repeated that technique the way I remembered the technique from the session for about a week. And within a few days, all of those health problems went away. It was so quick. I started feeling better. The fever completely disappeared. I could eat again. Nothing was making my stomach upset. It was a whole huge shift. And I was changed. And it sounds like a cliche, but I actually even stopped being interested in the subjects I was studying at university. I just wanted to know everything about the human mind, about the subconscious mind. I started reading like all self-help books I could find in the library. And I was just Googling things, instead of studying for exams. And I was just like, I want to study this. And later on, it wasn't a straightforward journey, I'm not gonna lie, but later on when I did end up studying clinical hypnosis many years later, I found the very same technique in my hypnosis textbook. And it was one of the key, like, basic hypnosis relaxation techniques to help people to drop back into their bodies, to switch off, to regulate their nervous system. And I was like, oh my goodness. So it was true. Like, I am working with this very same technique now.
Wow. That's a really powerful testimony. Your ability to surrender, and then your ability to follow the path that the universe was laying out for you, right? Those little messages don't often come as loud voices saying, "Oh, Stepanka, follow this, do this. You're gonna be enlightened. Your body's gonna feel better." It's really amazing. I'm curious what was the connection for you going through that yoga class and the instructor taking you through that hypnosis technique, and then you realizing there was being present in the body, and you realizing there was a connection to how you were feeling and the changes that were happening. What was happening there for you?
It felt like I dropped from being up here down into my body. It was almost like a shift, like my attention, my energy dropped from here, from my head, down into my body. And all of a sudden, I became aware of my body, of all these different parts of my hands and arms and feet. And it was so interesting to be present with different parts of my physical body. And obviously, looking back, I know I was extremely anxious. I was overthinking everything. I had a huge imposter syndrome. And I know what was happening with me back then, because I felt like I'm not good enough for that university. My imposter syndrome was so huge. I felt like I just don't belong. Like, they will find out any minute that I'm not smart enough to be here. Although I had all the evidence that I deserved my place there. Like, when I did my entrance exams, I was in the top 5, from hundreds of people. I was excellent at those subjects I was studying, yet none of that would convince me. I still thought like, oh my God, they will find out. Like, I'm not smart enough. Everyone else in the class is smarter than me. And I was just so worried about it. Like, the imposter syndrome was huge. And I think that's what was causing all of those like anxious thoughts. And I was just worrying like any minute, like I could be kicked out, which wasn't true. And it didn't even make sense. But you know, that's what's happening when you're suffering with, you know, anxiety and imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And how many people go to the doctor and are looking for a diagnosis, are holding on to a thread of hope that somebody will tell them something so then they can validate, like you were saying, what's happening, and I can move on with my life. But what a gift to be told physiologically, you're just fine, you're normal, everything is in place. And then what a further gift to surrender to the idea that I showed up in this moment, I dropped into my body, I really became very wise about what my body was telling me. And you created this huge shift in your life.
It
I mean,
was
it's really incredible.
It was scary because I really did turn, like everything got turned upside down. Because by the time I finished my first year, I shared with my parents, like, I don't want to continue. This is not my path. And they did not agree with me.
Yes.
And it's also how I ended up moving to England, and I just decided to travel for a little bit to find my path. I didn't know what it was, and it did take me a little while to find my calling and to acknowledge what it is I truly want to do, because sometimes we like know deep down, but we are too afraid to say it out loud. So it's very interesting, but that very moment was very crucial. And like I said, it sounds like a cliche, but one little shift just changed everything. It's like a snowball effect.
Yes. And I love what you said, because I got full body chills. Excuse me. When you said, we know deep down, we know deep down what we want, but we project into the world something very different.
Yeah.
And that's so important, to follow that thread wherever it takes you. And it does disrupt patterns. It does upend things, but to continue to listen is really important.
It's scary to trust. It's scary to follow where your soul is calling you. And it just doesn't come with a guarantee. It doesn't come with a straightforward path. And the thing is, it's always worth it, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. There is no other way.
No.
There is no other way to not listen and to not be guided. And the decisions are not easy. It's easy to sit back and ignore and status quo and stay with what feels good, but what pushes you outside of your limits and your edges and pushes you to move into what feels aligned with your soul. There's no other way to live. There's just no other way to live. Yeah, it's beautiful. Bravo. I just have to commend you. That's a hard path to take, and I honor where you've been.
Thank you.
Yes, that's beautiful. I'd love to talk about hypnotherapy. So a little bit about my journey and my, ongoing healing path. It's not anything that ever is done or over with, but hypnotherapy really, I made quantum leaps when I started doing hypnotherapy in my timelines and my healing timelines, past, present, and future. And it was so astounding to me. The work that I was doing in these sessions that would just work through so much stuff that I just can't even believe it. And I look back at some of my journals, and it's just astounding that the most work that I've done on my journey has been through hypnotherapy. So I'd love to know from you, from your own personal journey, and then those that you've worked with, why is that happening? Why are we crossing so many different timelines when we tap into that subconscious mind?
So I feel like other hypnotherapists might have maybe different answers. So I just want to start by saying
Sure.
everyone will have a different perspective on things.
Mhm.
To me personally, I feel like hypnosis is just such a great way to overcome so many blockages and break through all of those glass ceilings that have kept you on the same level for a very long time, that then it feels like a really big leap forward, because you are no longer holding yourself in the same way. And also there is a huge difference between what we consciously think and want and what we subconsciously fear. So often I will hear people say like, oh, I really want this, or I want to achieve this in my life. I want to attract this into my business. This is the kind of promotion I want. I want to speak on stage. I want to get published and so on. And then when I have them visualize that, dream, that goal, and I ask them, what are you feeling right now? What if this was handed over to you right now? Like, how would you feel if all of this would fall into your lap right this minute? Very often clients feel overwhelmed. They'll be like, oh, that would feel very scary if I was to speak on stage right now. It would feel very vulnerable if my story was published in a book, and that book was published under my name, and it's on Amazon now, and anyone can leave a review. All of a sudden, it feels a little more scary. And obviously, on a subconscious level, you do fear all of those things. We do fear those things. And consciously, we're like, yeah, I would love it. I would love it if I was given $10 million right now. And then, on a subconscious level, like, oh my God, everyone would use me. I would lose the money, or I wouldn't know how to handle it, or I would feel so overwhelmed because I just don't trust myself with money. Because every money I've had till this point, I spend it without investing, without being wise. So if I was handed over this money, like, oh my God, I don't know if I could handle it. So on a conscious level, we always like, yes, I could do it. I love it. I want it right now. I would be ecstatic. But on a subconscious level, there are those sort of fears that hold us back. We stay in our comfort levels. We keep ourselves safe. And with hypnosis, for me, and also one thing I should mention, there is different types of hypnosis as well. There is different styles that hypnotherapists might use, and there is different types of techniques. But one of the techniques I like using very much is when we are working with both your mind and your body, and we are bringing those conscious concepts, meaning the dreams, the visions you have, all of those things, but we're really bringing them down into the body. And we are showing our nervous system that all of those things are safe. We are showing the body like, yeah, if you achieved this, like, you would still be okay. Because that survival instinct is always stronger. Our primal brain, if you like, our instinctual brain and emotional brain, they always override our rational brain. So if there is a strong emotion attached to something like fear or panic and feelings of unsafety, like, that will always win over that logical, like, yeah, we would manage. Right? So it's really important to include our nervous system in all of those things and to guide our bodies into safety, because many of us do carry wounds, whether we are consciously aware of them or unaware, whether they have been passed down onto us, or whether they might be even from a different time, from a different lifetime. And so that's one of my favorite ways of using hypnosis. Of course, there's many other ways of how one can use hypnosis. And so I'm gonna pause here if you want, if it was making sense, and before I continue.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's really important to address the somatic experience. I know in my experience, I'll tell a little story. So after I had my second daughter, I had this really bad low back pain and hip pain that would come and go on and off regularly. I mean, no amount of stretching, no amount of chiropractor. I mean, it was just gnawing. And it took a lot of hypnotherapy sessions, but I did one. It was a QHHT session. You're probably familiar with that, Dolores Cannon's method. I did that and I got to the root of it. And I tapped into a past lifetime where I had lost both of my legs in the war. And when I had my second daughter, it opened up that wound. And there were so many things stored in that low back. And I have not had pain in that since moving through that session. So that was just one example of how hypnosis has been so powerful for me. But if I had not addressed the body component, right, like you said, it would have been completely misaligned. I had to address, and it was a really hard session. It was very physically hard because there was so much pain I had to move through. But I'll be honest, I haven't had any of that pain since then.
It must have been a very powerful release.
It really was.
Isn't it interesting? I do find that very often lower back and hips are places where we store unprocessed and unacknowledged and old traumatic emotions. And
yes,
yeah, I've known and I have worked with even very young people who would have these like mysterious pains in their hips, even though they were physically healthy. And you would think like, oh, I'm in my 20s. I shouldn't be having all of these pains in my hips. Maybe if I was in my 80s, I would like understand, like I've been using my hips my whole life, but why is it happening? And it's actually very common that these are some of the places where people have these untapped emotions. And hypnosis aside, I know stories of people who had huge releases, like even during yoga in certain hip opening positions, and they don't know what they tapped into. And all of a sudden, all of these emotions start coming up. So thank you for sharing your experience with us. That's so powerful.
Yeah. It's important, I think, to recognize that, I was in my early 30s when this kind of activated for me. And like you, I just wanted somebody to tell me, oh, it's this or it's that. Not that I needed a pill, but I could not find any sort of resolution or relief from it until I really addressed it in hypnotherapy. So it's a very powerful tool. It has taken me through a lot of different journeys and many different levels of my physical body and then my energetic body as well. So thank you for diving into this work and being a person who facilitates that for others.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's talk about the emotional freedom technique. So this is also known as tapping.
Yes.
People are probably maybe familiar with that. Could you give us a little bit of an idea about how you use it with hypnotherapy and maybe something people that are listening or watching we could do today together to tap into how that could be powerful for our own journey?
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you asked about tapping because I love this technique so much. And I feel it's just so complementary to hypnosis and other things I do with my clients, because I actually think there are times when EFT, emotional freedom technique, aka tapping, is actually better suited than hypnosis or anything else. Because in our modern society, we don't acknowledge our emotions enough. At least my generation, I would assume your generation, like we haven't had education on emotions. We haven't been taught emotional intelligence. And actually maybe growing up, we got told off for crying. We got told off for feeling certain emotions, and we couldn't really make sense out of them. Sometimes we got bribed by, like, if you stop crying, you could have ice cream, or if you stop crying, you get a slice of cake. Or it was the opposite. We got punished. Like, if you don't stop crying, you won't leave your bedroom. Like, you won't be able to watch the TV with the family, or whatever the punishment was. Like, these are very common stories. And the message is emotions are not okay. Like, it's not safe for us to feel emotions, or it's a sign of a weakness and you shouldn't show it. So we go through our lives suppressing, ignoring our emotions. And if we ignore them long enough, they can turn into health problems. They will be affecting and impacting our moods. And I actually find that emotional work is incredibly powerful. And for those of you listening or watching this and you are hearing about EFT for the first time, let me briefly explain what it actually is. EFT is a combination of modern energy psychology and traditional Chinese medicine. So basically the technique looks like you are tapping on different points on your body, mostly the upper part of your body. And while you are tapping, you are saying certain phrases out loud, ideally, if you are with a practitioner in person or online, virtually, on Zoom. You tap along with the practitioner, they will show you the way, and you are saying things. And that's what confused me the most when I first experienced EFT as a client, because you're actually speaking into the negative emotions first and foremost. And I was thinking, like, how is it helpful to be like reminding myself of that physical pain or that emotional pain? Like, what's the point of it all? That actually, that's the powerful bit. You are tapping on those energy points, on those acupressure points, if you like, on your hand, on your face, which is sending signals of safety and comfort to your nervous system. So you are actually showing your body it's safe for us to feel this. It's safe for us to say this out loud, and we can process it and release it. Because emotions are nothing but energy in motion. Yes. So it's actually not as scary. You know, the more you resist emotions, the more difficult it gets. So you are tapping while speaking about what you are feeling. And it actually feels so good. It's like this big relief. You can finally give yourself permission to feel it, process it, and release it. And only once there's been this shift within you, like you feel like, oh, I feel a little lighter, like acknowledging those emotions, processing them and releasing them, then the practitioner will guide you into what I call this, like the second part of the technique, where you actually start programming something positive instead. Let's say the positive change you would like to see in your behavior, the positive feelings you are so ready to feel in your body. And this technique can be used for anything from physiological, just a short note here, like EFT supported me with a lot of health problems in my mid-20s. So it definitely can work for you with physical healing and really helping you navigate that journey as well. To then emotions, to relationships with others, to abundance blocks and creativity and different fears and phobias. And talking of phobias, I actually experienced EFT when I was about 16 years old for the first time, because I had a severe snake phobia. And that phobia was like so huge for me. I had nightmares almost every other night about snakes killing me. And my dad, he was really ahead of his times. I do have to appreciate my dad. He ended up booking me with an EFT practitioner.
Wow.
And at that point, I couldn't even look at an image of a snake. and I couldn't touch a book or a textbook where there was a picture of a snake. So in biology classes, I would have to skip the pages with snakes on them.
I'm laughing because this sounds so familiar, Stepanka. Like I also had that sounds very
Wow.
real to me. Yes. This is very so
Sometimes
I'm
people
curious,
don't
did
get
it
it,
help?
who hasn't experienced it, like
Right.
doesn't get, like, you actually don't want to see a picture. That image itself can evoke a lot of emotions, or even touching an image of a snake, like I couldn't do it. And after one session, like I remember like Googling snakes on my laptop, and I was just
Wow.
looking at them. I'm like, okay, I can do it. That's interesting. I can touch a picture. So it was a huge jump for me. And I know for someone who hasn't had such a phobia, this doesn't sound like a big thing, but it was a
No,
big deal to
that is
me.
a big thing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a really interesting story. I have found with the snakes for me, it was through hypnosis. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
work specifically on the snake fear, but other fears
Yeah.
that I've become a bit desensitized to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can see them on a page, I can see them on a screen, and not I can my attention can stay there now.
Yeah.
So while I don't want to hold one and I don't want to find one in my bathroom like I have before, I there it's not as bad. So that's really interesting. I'm curious. Oh, this is fascinating. Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
use EFT with hypnosis? Do you use them
So
in conjunction?
Not really. I would
Yeah.
assess what's the best technique, and why I, for
Mhm.
example, said at the very beginning, like EFT can sometimes be a better suited technique than hypnosis. So
Mhm.
I want to give you an example of that because I feel that might clarify it a little more.
Sure.
When someone is very emotional,
Mhm.
it might not, they might not even want to sit still, and they might not want to follow along with like a visualization. And it's much better to actually do an active technique like EFT and tap on all the different points while speaking and straight away processing the emotion right there and then. And I have had sessions with clients when they come to the session feeling very emotional, and yeah, like closing their eyes and visualizing something that's just something they can't do, or it doesn't feel authentic, or it you know what I mean, when like
Yes,
emotions
yes.
run really high, it's so hard to sit down and meditate. So the same
It
thing
is.
can happen. And also when there is a lot of like anger, or something has just happened, or if it feels too scary to visualize something, EFT can be a really great way to help someone calm down the nervous system, to process it, to release it. And well, in a way, we could say I use it in conjunction. Like sometimes I will actually help clients to first process some sort of a fear or insecurity and emotion, and then I will guide them into something that involves like visualizations and positive visualizations, and we plant the
Yeah.
seeds for that positive change in a different way. So it could definitely work together.
Wow. That's amazing. And it makes sense. Those that are like highly charged in the
Yeah.
moment, it is hard to get into a space where,
Yeah.
you're and tapping into your subconscious mind.
Yeah,
But
or
this
if
is kind of
something
a
upsetting has happened in a family, in
right.
a relationship, or I remember last year, this time I had a client who witnessed something really upsetting at a Christmas party she was attending, and we just happened to have a session straight after. So, instead of me trying to calm her down and like sit down and close your eyes, actually a better suited technique would have been EFT, and it was, and like the person literally does experience an immediate shift. It's quite beautiful. I do have clients who will request EFT every single time because they love
Oh, wow.
feeling that shift in the body that happens while you tap in.
Okay, can we do a short one?
Of course, of course. What would you
Just take
like to
us
do?
through um let's do
Mm-hmm.
one for anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Generalized anxiety.
Yes. So I'll keep it quite short for the purpose. And
Okay.
if you are watching this or listening to this firstly, it will be easier to watch because we will be tapping on different points. So while I'll try explain it as much as I can with my words, it might be slightly easier for you to watch the video rather than just listening to the audio. And
can I just make a distinction? With the tapping is on the meridian points, correct? Okay,
yes.
the Chinese meridian points. Okay,
yes.
I just wanted to make that distinction. Okay.
Yes, it is. So you can think of them as these acupressure points, but there is basically energy lines running through the body, and it's just, it is beautiful. And if anxiety, we can do it on anxiety, but if anxiety is not what you are feeling right now, I would love to invite you to choose any other emotion. So maybe we just take a minute here and just check in with yourself. What is it that I'm feeling right now? Like, what emotion is present in my body? If I wasn't judging myself, if I was completely open here, like, what am I feeling? And if you can, write it down and ask yourself how intense this emotion is on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being like, oh, it's completely overwhelming. Like, I can feel it so much right now. It's very intense. And 1 is like, not at all, not present in my body. So whereabouts are you? If it's impacting you, let's say, in a negative way, or if you're feeling it quite a bit, it will definitely be above 5 usually, because that's like the halfway. So
are we trying to tune into where it is in our body as well?
No. Right now, we could. I do it sometimes with clients, but it's not a general rule. We don't have to. But just give it a number on a scale from 1 to 10 and write it down next to the feeling. So for all of you watching this, following along, if you need a little more time, just hit pause and get really clear on where you are on that scale from 1 to 10, 10 being like, it's very overwhelming, this feeling. And 1, not at all. So, and I'll keep it really simple for the purpose of this podcast. And we will start with the karate chop point, which is here. It's the side of the hand, and it could be on either side. It could be on the right, on the left. It doesn't matter. It's present on both, that point. And here you can gently tap. Some people like using 2 fingers, but because this point is slightly bigger, larger, I like to use all of my fingers, just gently tapping. And just start by taking a few deep breaths. And whenever you are feeling exhausted, whenever you are feeling like the energy is not flowing right in your body, let me know if that makes sense. But whenever you feel like it, just stop this point for a little bit. Even if you don't do anything else, just give yourself a few moments, taking a few deep breaths in and out while tapping this point. So this point in itself can be helpful, even if you don't do anything else. And here we start with what we would call like the first sentence, the foundational sentence, and it's always quite similar. So even though I am feeling anxious, or even though I am feeling ashamed of myself, so whatever feeling you wrote down, even though I'm feeling guilty, even though I feel like I am really lazy and I didn't get enough done. So whatever is present for you, just insert that emotion. So even I'll just go with anxious for the purpose of this. Yeah. So even though I am feeling anxious right now, I completely and totally love and accept myself. Taking a deep breath in. And again, even though I am feeling anxious, I completely and totally love and accept myself. Even though I am feeling anxious, I completely and totally love and accept myself. If you are aware of that feeling in a part of your body, let's say the anxiety is in your tummy, you could even say like, even though I'm feeling anxious, and I can feel it in my belly, or my stomach is all tensed, or however you're feeling that emotion, you could also add it here. So basically, this is the first statement. This is all about acknowledging what you are feeling, and you would repeat along with me or after me.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Can you do it in your head, or is it important to repeat
You
out
could
loud?
do it in your head. And
Okay.
I've done it. I've used this technique on public transport when I first discovered it. Like, you could do it just quietly for yourself, but there is something about saying it out loud. Really finally giving yourself permission to say it, to acknowledge the feelings you've been feeling. It can be very liberating. And doing this with a practitioner, even like this on Zoom or on camera, like, it can be actually quite healing, letting someone else witness you saying those things and allowing yourself to process it. There is a healing that happens just by being in the presence of someone else.
Yeah, being seen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So normally we would just do this like 3 times, but I am a very intuitive EFT practitioner. Sometimes, like, I will just get messages what else to say. So every session looks differently. I'm just taking you through more of a general example. Then we would move on to the eyebrow point, which is here, the beginning of your eyebrow here. And you would just be using 2 fingers here because it's a small area. And here we can just say, all of this anxiety, all of that heaviness, or whatever you are feeling. I'm just gonna quickly just show all the other points. The next point will be the side of the eye. So it will be on the bone, not on your temple, not in your eye. You don't want to poke your eye. It's on that bone here. So tapping there, and again, we would say something like all of that anxiety or whatever feeling. Then we will move on to it's not in the eye socket, it's on that bone here. So tapping there. Then the other point is below your nose. It's halfway between your nose and your upper lip. Then we've got the chin, and again, it's like halfway between your lower lip and your chin. And then we've got a collarbone point. So you would be tapping on or slightly below the collarbone. And here you can use all of your fingers again because it's a larger area, so you know you will cover that point. You don't have to worry about anything. So the next point is actually below your arm. Hopefully you can see me here. But basically, if you are a lady and you wear a bra, it will be where your bra would be, so on the side. So you tap there. And then we will wrap up with the top of your head. So it's the middle of your head. And again, use all of your fingers and gently tap all around here. So now we can do the whole technique.
Wow.
So would you like to follow along? So even though I'm just gonna say, actually, I'm feeling called to this. I'm just gonna say, instead of anxiety, this feeling. So everyone can insert their own feeling into it. Even though I am feeling this feeling, I completely and totally love and accept myself. Even though I am feeling this feeling in my body right now, and it feels really heavy. And part of me feels like I shouldn't feel it. Like I should have it all together. I completely and totally love, honor, and accept myself. Taking a deep breath, even though I am feeling this feeling. And it's not easy to acknowledge it. I am open to processing and releasing this feeling today. I completely and totally love, honor, and accept myself. So moving on to the eyebrow point now. This feeling, all of those emotions in my body right now, the side of the eye, below the eye. I'm choosing to acknowledge this feeling right now. Upper lip. It's so safe for me to feel this. Feeling this feeling is actually healing. I don't have to fight this feeling right now. And maybe below the arm, maybe just by acknowledging this feeling, I am already beginning to feel lighter. This feeling in my body, the eyebrow point. I am choosing to welcome this feeling. Side of the eye, I'm choosing to open up my heart right now. I am softening. I am choosing to soften my heart. Below the eye, it's so safe for me to feel this feeling right now. I am safe. And I can feel how my body is softening right now. And it's also safe for me to release this feeling. And maybe I can even understand why I'm feeling this in the first place. Or maybe not, and that's also okay. Below the arm, I don't need to understand everything to release it. Top of the head, it's so safe for me to release this feeling and feel a little better. I don't have to feel ecstatic right away, but I can simply shift the way I feel right now. So I'm choosing better thoughts right now. I am so proud of myself for feeling this feeling and releasing it today. I can feel a subtle shift in my body. I can feel how my heart has opened up, releasing all of that heaviness, releasing all of those fears. I am choosing to feel better right now. And now we will come back to the karate choke point and we will wrap up the technique. Now that I have released all of those heavy feelings, I am choosing to feel better. I am noticing a subtle shift in my body. Now that I have released all of that heaviness, I am noticing a difference already. And I am so proud of myself for doing this technique today, because it is hard to face our own feelings. Taking a deep breath in, relax your hands and just place them on your thighs, on your knees, gently closing your eyes for a moment. And just notice how different you feel. Notice how your heart feels. Notice how open is the front of your heart, the back of your heart, and just gently breathe into it. Allowing it to open even more, taking a few deep breaths. And maybe you will even feel a subtle flow of energy in your body. Maybe you will feel energy pulsating from the tips of your fingers all the way up to your shoulders. And just gently thank yourself for doing this today. Taking a deep breath in. Breathe out and open your eyes and check in with yourself where you are at on that scale from 1 to 10 right now. How intense is that feeling right this minute? On what number it is, and write it down and just notice that difference.
I need to share mine. So I went into this, I said anxiety, but it was actually stress, and my stress number was 8. And I think that process is so valuable because I really do feel like my stress is about a 2 right now.
Wow. Yeah.
It's manageable, right? The stress is still there. The stress is still ever present, but I'm a lot more connected into my body. My shoulders don't feel as tight. My heart feels a lot more open. Yeah, it's a very powerful technique. So thank you for taking us through that. And those of you listening that maybe are in the car and can't do that, take some time to to go back and listen to this and do that, because it really is very powerful.
Yeah.
Do you have any videos that people could tap into that you share maybe on your website or YouTube channel?
I do in my private Facebook group. So there is
Okay.
actually quite a few. There is some on things like not feeling good enough, or feeling overwhelmed, or feeling like there is so many things on my to-do list right now, like how do I find peace? So there is some videos inside my Facebook community, which we can always link with this episode for you to find it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's do that. That would
And
be great.
now
Thank you so
imagine
much.
it's so great to follow a video, and I think they can make a huge
It is.
shift right away. But if I was to have a one-on-one session with you right now, like I would ask even more specific questions, like, okay,
Sure.
so what does it actually feel like? Like what sort of stress? We would go deeper. Okay, in your shoulders, you feel it in your shoulders, you feel it in your belly, and I would incorporate all of that. So I would
That's
be
wonderful.
like that, like heaviness in my shoulders, that heaviness in my belly. Like a practitioner can make it really specific for you, and it's a tailor-made experience as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important to note. I know you do a lot of work with emotional intelligence, and I do feel like a lot of people really miss developing their emotional intelligence somewhere along the way. And then with our lives getting busy and stressful and connected to all sorts of different things, we lack an awareness around developing our emotional intelligence. So I'm curious, I know this technique really can kind of help you tap into what those emotions you're feeling. But for those people that maybe aren't self-aware, and really don't have a very good self-awareness or good self-regulation of their emotions, what is a step that people could take? What's something that they could do to develop that self-awareness? Because having good self-awareness and good self-regulation really helps move the needle for so much in our life. Yeah.
So self-awareness is definitely the number one step in emotional intelligence, because how are you supposed to heal or process and release emotions if you're actually not even aware of feeling any?
Right.
So the step number one I would suggest is to make it okay. To make all emotions okay. Stop labeling them as positive or negative, and start seeing all of them as simply emotions. So emotional, in my eyes, the way I teach emotional intelligence, it is a combination of like the energy work, physiological work with your nervous system, self-regulation and all of that. But we actually need to shift the way we think about emotions in the first place, because we got told like these are the positive emotions, these are the negative ones. And if you are a spiritual person who is maybe familiar with things such as the law of attraction, you might feel like attracting something bad. You might be like, well, if I allow myself to feel this anger, does it mean I'm gonna attract something bad? Like, will I attract more angry situations or more angry people? So we really have to work through all of this, and we've got to remind ourselves that it's so safe. Like, we are human beings. We are not robots. We are meant to feel emotions. And imagine how boring your life would be if you did not feel any emotions. And we can only identify and pinpoint happiness because we felt sad, because we felt the opposite of that. And that's what makes a life such a rich, colorful experience. It is our emotions. So just start thinking about emotions differently if you would like to become more self-aware and you are finding it really hard to pinpoint the emotion you are feeling, or even become aware when you are feeling something. Some of the signs of not being enough self-aware is that you don't feel anything until it becomes unbearable. So you feel, okay, yeah, I'm all right, until you become this volcano that just wants to erupt. Or nothing until you feel really overwhelmed with an emotion. So if there is like a sudden urge and you didn't feel anything until that very point, the chances you need to develop your self-awareness a little more, because there is subtle signs. There is like, oh, this made me feel a certain way, right? And very often when we don't do that, when we don't acknowledge our emotions as we feel them, it just snowballs. And it will become a very difficult emotion to identify and understand. It will be a compounded emotion, loads of different emotions together.
Yeah.
So start telling yourself a new story about emotions. One of my favorite mantras is, it's safe for me to feel. It's safe for me to feel. It's safe for me to feel this emotion. And normalize them.
Yeah. Normalize them. Yeah, I think that's really where I wanted to go. If you can't feel it, how can you move through it?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and whether that's something that's happened to you in this lifetime or a prior lifetime, it is so important to acknowledge what you are feeling.
Yes.
Bringing that to the surface, right? That's scary for a lot of people. I know that.
Yes.
But it is important to have an awareness around it. So I want to take a left turn here for a second. So we were talking earlier before we started recording about, I had a dream about Stepanka last night, and I had never met Stepanka. And I thought it was interesting. I was sharing this with her because I think it's important to recognize that we can co-create with people in the dream space, and we can create the lives that we have imagined for ourselves in these alternate realities. So, and then she shared with me that she's been having a lot of dreams as well that are telling. So I just want to kind of open the conversation about what happens, because we're tapping into our subconscious mind when we dream, right? So what is happening there? What do you think is going on? Not necessarily that I was dreaming about you, but the ability to co-create with somebody. And then your dreams, your ability to create a reality that is beyond what you're experiencing right now.
So I don't think there is like one united answer I could share with you.
Sure.
Because there is, I believe there is a few different types of dreaming. Sometimes like we can tell that our mind was processing something. Maybe we received an information earlier that day, or I do find when clients are having a lot of stress and there is a lot on their plates, and they are like on the go and there is just so much happening, their brain will actually almost like process all that's happened while they are asleep. And there is different theories on this as well, but like my personal view is just like, yeah, the mind is just trying to digest all that madness, all that crazy stuff that's happening. And it's almost like for your own safety, it's like your mind wants to make sense out of everything that's happened. And if there is a repetitive dream that's rather unusual, that seems disconnected from everything else, like that is something to explore. And as a child, I had a very repetitive dream, and that was I was being chased by a bull over and over again. And that's a dream that just kept coming back to me in many different ways. Other times I saw a horse in a field. I'm like, oh, there is a horse. And I would walk towards it. And in that very moment, it would turn into a bull. And the same thing would be happening. So whenever you're having like rather unusual dreams that repeat themselves, there again could be like different explanations, but like look into the symbols of that dream. Like what is happening? What is your reaction in that dream? So if it is something you have experienced in this lifetime, it could be that your mind again is trying to go through it to make sense out of it, to fully grasp like the meaning of the events. Sometimes we also like go through it again just to see if we could respond differently. to that situation. So there could be almost like a healing aspect of it. But if it's a strange, a weird dream, if you like the one with me seeing that bull chasing me on, in every dream, like that is something I would say a little more mystical, a little more unusual. And I don't personally believe in like dream meanings as such, because I really feel they can be very unique. We are not the
Agreed.
same people. And, if you look up a bull, it will have a meaning in like, yeah. And I personally think it's about going within and asking yourself, like, what could it mean? Like, what does it remind me of? What sort of feeling was I feeling? And then there is different types of dreams. I know a client of mine shared these unusual dreams of being surrounded by a lot of people and constantly attending like parties, and she was like, why am I dreaming about all these weird things? And when I asked her a few additional questions, what actually transpired was that she really craved attention. She actually felt quite lonely in certain aspects of her job, and she was dreaming of and socializing, and at the same time she had a little bit of social anxiety, but the other part of hers really wanted to have that experience. So it can also tell us about our suppressed desires. Sometimes there will be sexual desires that will come up in dreams for people. So it really is about having a non-judgmental approach to your dreams, not judging them, and just allow yourself to explore, and the answer will be most likely within. It's great to have someone as a sounding board, but I don't quite believe that a book could explain to you everything.
Isn't that truth? I agree with you about the dreams. They're a way to explore, what's happening maybe in your conscious life, right?
Yes.
We want to attribute a meaning to everything. What does this mean for me? Oh, I dreamt about this. Let me go look it up in a book. But it's not always that. There's patterns that come through our dreams. For connecting with you in the dream space, for me, it was about feeling your energy. I woke up feeling so happy and content, and I knew that this connection with you today was going to be very aligned for me. So it was important to feel that from you, right? Co-creating in that space, I think, is important. I've also had in the dream space a connection with somebody that I knew over 20 years ago, and it was a repeating dream. And it didn't stop repeating for me until I acknowledged something, acknowledged the emotion that I was feeling.
Yeah.
And that was the point of continuing to show me this.
Yeah.
I was not acknowledging an emotion in my conscious waking life. So my dream state was trying to get me to recognize this. And I was just seeing it like, why does this person keep coming up for me? So there's a really big emotional component with our dreams that's really what I wanted to address.
And sometimes people do have prophetic dreams as well. Like, some of us have those abilities, and then there is different types of dreams where people like manifest their desires by dreaming about them, and it's a very conscious technique, and it's not anything I am an expert in, but I do know people who focus on those things quite a lot, and it's very interesting. So I love how both you and I agreed that there is just so many layers to it. There is not a black and white answer to those sort of things.
No, there's not. And talking about the emotional component with dreams, I think it's really important to recognize that, I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't remember my dreams, or I don't. It's simply about continuing to just pay attention to what, and they're so unique. They're unique to you, and they're unique to what's happening in your life and what you're moving through. So they're such a neat guidepost for sure. So I know you have a background in linguistics, or that's what you pursued at university early on. And I've heard you speak about the vibrational truth of words. And I too feel this so deeply in my bones. The way for me to process so much emotionally comes through my writing. The Holy Spirit moves through me at times, and I have journals for 15 years
Wow.
of things that I have processed through words. So, can you talk a little bit about how I don't even know how to put it into words, how words are so in how we can move through words. I know that sounds very simplistic, but do you know what I'm saying? Can I
Actually, the
like
opposite.
transmit
I
to
think
you?
that's just such a complex topic.
It is. Maybe I can just beam to you what I'm feeling because it's so beautiful. And I think it's part of the reason why when we pick up a good book, a book that really speaks to us, or a book of poetry that just really talks to a deep part of who we are, there's magic in words.
Yes.
And I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit.
I feel like that could be an episode of its own.
It could. It really could. Maybe we should just leave it at that.
Because there is so much to say on this topic, and I am, like yourself, really passionate about it, and I feel there is power in our spoken words as well as written words, as well as like sharing something in front of another. Like it is just a whole new level to our experience. I also receive a lot of wisdom and guidance through writing. So it is journaling and letting my hand just flow on paper. It is one of my favorite techniques, spiritual techniques, really. And there is also a huge emotional connection to the words we use, whether it is the book you pick up and you might be reading a made-up story, but it will unlock emotions within you, emotions you were not even aware of. So there actually is a lot of healing in reading fiction books, and I sometimes find that people see it as escapism, or it could of course become escapism, or as some sort of a hobby to do when you have nothing else to do. But there can be a lot of healing that gets unlocked in people. There could be remembering happening when you read a book, remembering past lives, being reminded of stories you have forgotten. When you read poetry that is all about emotional connection, that many people will interpret the same poem in very different ways. So everything you read, even fiction, poetry, even non-fiction, memoir, like it will tell you a lot about you. It will give you an insight into what kind of emotions came up for you, what made you feel disgusted, what made you feel excited, what put you off, what felt really good. Like everything, like there is guidance coming to us from every possible way, including reading books. And then there is the other component of how every word carries, yes, I would say frequency that's very unique to us. And I have a journaling course on my website, and one of the first exercises I share with my clients in there is to go through a list of words. And they seem like random words. And I ask them to write down the first word, image, meaning that arises for them when they read that word. And it's such an interesting experience. I did a similar exercise in my first year at university when I was studying linguistics. And there would be words such as the color white. What comes up for you when you see or when you think of the color white? And most girls were like, wedding dresses, wedding, getting married.
Yes. Purity, Holy,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Purity was
Mhm.
another one that was quite common. Um, then another word was red. What comes up for you when you see, when you think of the
Angry. Yes.
angry? Some people said
Mad.
stop, like traffic
Oh,
lights, like a
yes.
red light.
Yes.
So some people shared stop. And then there was a word, student.
Mm-hmm.
What comes up for you when you think of the word student? And some people thought books, studying. And then there were those who said being broke, not having enough money, struggling, right? So it does tell you a lot about your internal beliefs, about your experience of something as well. And I had this knowledge from my university, but then I did my own experience and I wrote down words such as women, men, money, job,
Mm.
a degree. And I just took myself through the whole list and I was quite shocked at the
Mm-hmm.
words I wrote down. And I'll be honest with you, one of the words I wrote down next to women was like, cannot be trusted. So I
Mm.
obviously had a huge sisterhood wound. I wasn't trusting women for a very long time. I was afraid of opening myself up because I got hurt by someone very badly in my early 20s. And it was such a shocking
Mm-hmm.
experience that for the longest of time, I wouldn't let any other woman to get really close to me. When it
Mm-hmm.
came to money, I had some, money blocks, and I was like, not able to hold on to them. That's what I wrote down. So looking at the kind of emotions you have attached
Yes.
to different words, that
Yes.
can also give you an insight into where you at with everything, what sort of beliefs you have about the world around you. And of course,
Wow.
those seem like neutral words, but actually,
Right.
is there such a thing?
No, there's not. Let's do an episode on that. Are you up for
Yes,
that?
yes, I am.
I
Let's
really love
dive
that.
in properly.
Yeah, let's give it a whole pot of time because it, I just think about my own experience in some of the healing that I've done and the words that have come forth and that are so triggering to me to hear some of those
Yeah.
words about who I was in a past life or how I've worked through some of those things in this life. And still I'm like, oh, you say that word. Whoo. There's still some things that I have not worked through. Right.
Yeah. A word
Um,
can trigger a whole avalanche of emotions.
yes.
And again, it
That's
brings us back to
amazing.
self-awareness. When we're not aware of it, we like, what is going on? And we might even point
Why?
fingers rather than looking at
Yes.
what has just happened within us.
I mean, if you think about it, words are how big companies market to people, right? It's how, why do I feel certain emotions when I read a poem that's a haiku that's 3
Mm.
stanzas, right? But it's
Oh,
just so rich and
I
it
love haiku.
I do too. I do too. Oh, we're okay. We'll just stop that right there because we'll do
Let's
another
keep it.
episode on linguistics. Yes, I love it. I really do. It touches me deeply, and we'll bring our poems and it will be a great time. um, so I would like to ask you about overthinking. Um, so you wrote a post on social media about overthinking. And you said, this is quote something you said, that project, offer, or art piece, 99% chance you're overthinking it. Take action, work it out along the way. Overthinking depletes, action elevates. And I read that and I just felt so seen because that has been my experience too with overthinking. We get into this conundrum where we just think about every specific outcome that could happen, and that inaction it creates contempt. Um, there's a saying that says a rolling stone gathers no moss. There's really a lot of truth to that, right? Because when we move, whether we're moving in our mind or our body, we're doing something. So I just loved that because I think with the advent of social media and our devices and how much time we spend, I think we overthink as a society and a culture a lot. Why do you think that is?
So there, of course, is many different reasons, but one of the patterns I see a lot in my clients is
Mm-hmm.
is obviously a fear of getting it wrong, a fear of making a mistake, a fear of looking foolish in front of others, and also fear of getting disappointed. Getting disappointed with ourselves, and disappointment can be a very deep wound, an
Yeah.
emotion we avoid at any cost. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I often dig deeper with my clients, it can boil down to the things they heard and saw growing up. So there could have
Mm.
been that impatient parent who wouldn't let a child make a mistake without punishing them, who wouldn't explain to them that as a human, you will make a lot of mistakes and it's okay to get it wrong, and you will try again and it will be okay. And then there could be this fear of like, if I get it wrong, if I make a
Mm-hmm.
mistake, if I do say the wrong thing, I could also get punished by others. And most of my clients are women, although I do have some men working with me as well. Majority of them are women. And
Mm-hmm.
and often it will be this impatient dad or mom who was really strict with them, and they learned to tiptoe around people, to be really
Right.
quiet, to not share their voice, to not be too loud, to not take up too much space, because if I do say something, I could anger that parent and they could punish me, they could punish my siblings, it could turn into an ugly situation, so I'll keep my voice really down. And
Right.
that's when we speak about a good girl syndrome, really,
Mm-hmm.
when we
Yes.
try to shrink away and be as little as and as invisible as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
I now find making mistakes and getting it wrong, so to speak, as a very liberating and healing
Mm-hmm.
process. And
It
I
is.
know there was a time in my life when I actually challenged myself to make those mistakes I was so afraid of. And some of
Yes.
them were even silly things, such as not having my house perfectly cleaned when someone was
Mm-hmm.
coming over. That it should always be spectacular. It should always be spotlessly clean when someone comes over. And I remember
Yeah.
like I would drive myself insane. I would like
Yeah.
I would do so much cleaning and I would put everything in its own place. And I remember when I was really leaning into my this comfort zone, if you like, leaning out of
Mm-hmm.
my comfort zone, I challenged myself to do those things, to go live on Facebook with no makeup, no, my hair being
Yes.
messy. I would say the wrong thing in an audio on Instagram stories and I wouldn't delete it. I wouldn't let myself correct it. I would make a mistake and I would let other people see it. I also am a very spontaneous person, and sometimes on social media I can type very quickly and I can make a typo or I just don't finish the word. I get so excited, I'll just jump straight onto the next word. And sometimes you'll just see like a half a word somewhere. And I used to get so mad at myself for these things. I need to be perfect. I need to look professional. And then I'm like, no, like I'm not going to delete it because it actually becomes such a limiting behavior, because you will not be able to expand beyond where you are if you are trying to like be perfect. So I would leave those typos and spelling mistakes on my social media. I do know at the minute I do have a typo on my website and I'm like, okay, when I get to it, I'll get to it. It's okay.
Yeah.
And it's these little things, and I just created those challenges for myself to get more comfortable with those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that it's so important to one, acknowledge where you're at and give yourself grace for moving through these things. I am a overthinker. But what has helped me, for those of you that are listening, is action. And it's action, like you talked about, Stepanka, is moving through the things that are not perfect. And you know what I found? The day keeps going on. The sun rises the next day.
Yeah.
I'm still here. Nobody has berated me for these little things that I did or didn't do. And the action forward is what has been most powerful for me. And sometimes it's just little steps, right? It's just the little things forward. And like you said, on social media, yeah, I've made little quips and quabbles and forgot a period here and there, or uploaded the wrong thing. Oh, well.
Yeah.
I find that when I can just laugh or move through it or move on from things that I tend to get in this overthinking trap. And that's what breeds these emotions that really feel unproductive. The anxiety, the frustration, the anger, the things that I have felt about myself at some point in my life that have held me back from moving forward.
Yeah.
So that I feel like I need an Overthinkers Anonymous, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And I love
movement
what you
forward
said.
is what helps.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. Like moving forward helps so much. And sometimes I find that very often spiritual people hold themselves back by
Yes.
waiting for the perfect alignment moment. That will never
Correct.
happen. Like, what does it
It
even
won't.
mean? So,
Yeah.
or like, oh, I need to wait for or I need to wait until I have this perfect, like crystal clear clarity on everything. The thing is, you will get clarity by taking action, by finding
Yes.
out what it is that works, what it is that doesn't, what it is that you like, what it is that you don't like. Actually, clarity doesn't come from like being stuck in one place and
Yes.
overthinking it over and over again. Actually, you will have even less clarity by staying stuck in
Yes.
one place. So one step at a time, and you will work things out. And it like I have supported artists in my business, and they will say the same about art, about paintings, about all the different creations they have. Like, you'll just have to take that first step, and you'll see what
Yes.
comes through. The same with writers, the same with spiritual entrepreneurs. It's that movement forward that helps us get clarity and get it right. And get it right doesn't mean perfect.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. I'll share this and then we'll wrap up. But I remember in one of my hypnotherapy sessions, I was standing at the top of these very long stairs, and the Lao Tzu quote came through: "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." And I love that quote. And it was at a time in my life when I was really struggling with being in my head about a lot of things and not taking action on things, because I was really wrapped up in overthinking, making sure everything has to be in place. And like you said, as a spiritual entrepreneur or a spiritual person, we think we need clarity on everything to move forward. And that's just not how it works. It's not how it works. Taking the little steps forward, you'll see this boulder open up, and your life will just start moving in a direction that you had not even anticipated because of the overthinking. So what a great conversation.
Oh my
Thank
goodness.
you for that.
I love that you quoted Lao Tzu.
Oh, yes. One of my, that actually came through in hypnotherapy. And I,
Wow.
of course, have studied Lao Tzu. I love the work. I just think it was so poignant. I mean, this is the beautiful thing about hypnotherapy. What can come through that really is a guidepost, right? A
Yeah.
guidepost for your life. So, how can people reach you, Stepanka?
So I am on Instagram at New Earth Woman. So feel free to send me a message. I'm always up for a chat with anyone who wants to share their takeaways, their breakthroughs. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share your feedback with us. And I am also on Facebook. So you can simply type up my name and become friends with me. And I always post various different things on social media on Facebook as well. And I have a free community on Facebook where there is a lot of resources in there. There is past master classes, EFT tapping videos. There is all sorts of resources there. If you like listening, if you enjoy podcasts, I do have my own podcast. It's basically mostly solo episodes. One of the ways I like sharing things that inspire me, breakthroughs, ideas, is by speaking. I love using my throat as one of the key channels in my work. So I will very often just hit the record button and I'll share everything that I want to speak into. It is definitely more of an intuitive podcast, and you can just listen to the latest episode and then work your way backwards. There is no right or wrong way of doing that. And
Excellent.
if you want some other free resources or you want to find everything in one place, just head over to my website, which is hypnocoaching.me. And there is a free hypnosis to download and all of my contact details. So all in one place.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'll link it all in the show notes. That's beautiful. And I can't wait to tune into your podcast.
Thank you.
That'll be a good thing to tune in while I do my road trips. So to wrap up, I always like to ask my guests, what is your grounded guidance for our community? And it's just something that is your unique parting wisdom, and we'll end there.
So I was curious to see what comes through when you ask me this question, and I really feel to wrap up this episode and to share something that's actually quite in alignment with everything we have been exploring here today. I would just invite you to do a little experiment with yourself and write down your emotions for a week straight. 3 times per day, just checking in with yourself and writing down what emotion you are feeling. And start acknowledging that, start normalizing it, and start telling yourself a new story. You don't have to feel ecstatic and high vibe, so to speak, all the time to have an incredible life. There is beauty in all of your emotions. There is richness in all of these emotions. And I think like all of us do know that feeling, I can only describe it as beautiful sadness. When, feeling sad or learning about something that's sad can feel beautiful at the same time, because you feel the raw capacity of your heart. You really get in touch with your body and with your humanness. And because this podcast is all about grounded guidance, this is such a grounded technique, because by getting in touch with your emotions, you're bringing yourself back into your body, reconnecting with that wisdom of your body. And the more we ignore those emotions, the louder they will get. They want to get our attention. So that's my message for today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Stepanka.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on the Grounded Guidance podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our podcast and leaving a review. Your feedback helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Until next time, stay grounded, stay guided, and keep stretching your edges to think differently. Take care, my friends.